Hello. Today we're going to discuss the concept of procrastination, which is basically putting things off that you know should be done, quite often putting them off permanently. Now, procrastination is a recurring theme throughout this course because it is commonly known as the thief of time, and it is one of the biggest enemies to getting things done, to getting the results you want, and to having a happy, balanced life. So let's look at some of the pains of procrastination. First of all, time is a finite resource for everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, you've only got so much time to get as much out of life as you possibly can. From past experience, I recall coming out of long, tedious meetings which haven't been productive and saying, my goodness, that's an hour of my life I shall never get back. And yet we continually waste our own time, given the option not to, and procrastinate. Now, procrastination causes a kind of pain of anxiety, frustration, guilt, stress, all of those feelings. If you know that you are continually procrastinating, you start to feel all of those emotions, and I'm sure you can identify with those. Perhaps more importantly, procrastination leads to lost opportunities and an unfulfilled life. Perhaps there was a job that you could have applied for and you just didn't get the application in on time. Perhaps there's an important colleague that you wanted to have a discussion with and you left it too late. Perhaps there was a girl or a boy that you were hoping to date and you hesitated and you didn't ask them for that date. Perhaps you've had a really excellent business idea but you haven't acted on it and saw somebody else acting on it and succeeding. We all know about lost opportunities as a consequence of procrastination. It may just be something like not getting fit because you constantly procrastinate when you have an opportunity to have a run or do some exercise. And ultimately, if you continually procrastinate, your self-esteem will take a dive. Okay, now some of the causes of procrastination. The first one is simply too much choice, too much indecision. You may have lots of things that you could be doing, and because you don't know which to focus on, your brain is whirring around using its precious resources, leaving it with no energy to actually do anything useful. The diagrams on the right of the screen were inspired by an excellent TED talk I heard by Tim Urban, and he talks about the instant gratification monkey. So it goes something like this. Your rational mind comes up with an idea, or it comes up with an action that needs to be carried out. But rather than taking that action, you are intercepted by the gratification monkey who looks for the easy option. So instead of doing that tricky report or speaking to that difficult colleague, you do the easy option. So you might sit down for 5 minutes on the couch instead of getting out there and doing a run. You might check emails or check your Facebook account rather than writing a difficult report. So going for the easy option is caused by the gratification monkey. The third diagram there is the panic monster. The panic monster comes from this idea that when you absolutely need to get the task completed, for example, filling in that tax return on the last day or finishing the presentation for an interview which is happening in 2 minutes, the panic monster steps in and makes sure you get it done. But the panic monster is one of the causes of that constant cloud hanging over your head when things aren't being done. Perhaps you've been in a position where you've simply got too much time. I know from personal experience, having a long summer vacation in education, I'd often do less guitar practice in my case, or exercise or household chores when I had too much time on my hand than when I only had a very limited amount of time in the evenings or weekends. Now, I feel perfectionism often is the cause of procrastination, especially when you're talking about the completion of a task. Now, I felt that whilst this course wasn't perfect, I felt it could offer a lot of value to people despite any ums and ahs, any errors. I felt it still had value. So I think it's important to realise that getting things done is more important than necessarily being perfect, in most cases anyway. And of course, if procrastination becomes ingrained, if you've believe yourself to be a procrastinator, if it becomes habitual, then it erodes your life on a daily basis. The last of these, overwhelm, well, of course, that's closely linked to too much choice and indecision. Now, there are some strategies to catch the thief, as I've called it, of procrastination, and there will be others throughout this course, all aimed at helping you take action. First of these, as I mentioned before, is simply done is better than perfect. If it has to be done, finish it, as long as it's fit for purpose. There are exceptions to this, of course. If you're producing something that has to be of high quality and highly accurate, then that wouldn't really apply. But in many cases, it's just better to get something done than procrastinate and not do it at all. If there are too many choices, try flipping a coin. If it comes down to sitting wondering which choice to take, just try flipping a coin and doing something rather than just, spending time and energy thinking about what to do. Now, this next one, create your own panic monsters. That's really about adding some structure to the day, blocking your day off and making sure that you get tasks done by a particular time. I'll be talking a little bit more about this later when I talk about using timers, but certainly creating some structure in your day, perhaps making yourself accountable by promising a result, promising that something will be completed by a certain time, will help create those deadlines, those panic monsters of your own. Now, the Pareto analysis, Pareto principle, and the 80-20 rule and the 5-second rule I shall be discussing in a moment. Okay, the first of these, the Pareto principle. Now, the Pareto principle was named after an Italian economist at the end of the 19th century who noticed that there was 20% of the pea pods in his garden were producing 80% of the peas, and he applied this to the whole idea of land ownership in Italy at the time. At 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. And as a rough rule, this can be applied to many of your endeavours. There will be certain endeavours, certain tasks that would give you the most bang for the buck. Some tasks that if you complete them will give you the best results, will make the most impact, will give you the opportunity to make the biggest contribution. So try and get into the habit of concentrating on what is really important and what will get you the most benefit, or those who you are wishing to help or contribute to the most benefit. This will help you avoid indecision, especially when you have a pile of tasks ahead of you each day. Okay, the 5-second rule. Now, the 5-second rule is not the 5-second rule about if you drop something on a piece of food on the ground, on the floor, if you pick it up within 5 seconds, it's safe to eat. It's not that one. It's based on a book by Mel Robbins, which you might want to check out, which basically is around the concept of hesitation being the kiss of death. So if you get an idea to do something, some task, count slowly, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and make sure that that task is done before you get to 1 or immediately after, because if you leave it, the likelihood is that you will put yourself off. The brain will talk you out of it, especially if it's something like, which is a little bit difficult task. So for example, you might want to approach somebody for a date, or you might want to start that report, or you might see somebody in a work environment that you need to have a difficult conversation with, but you put off having it, and then the opportunity is gone. So you might want to check the 5-second rule out in some more depth, but it's an idea. The idea behind it is that you trick and train your brain to take out action within 5 seconds. I talk here of progress opportunities, a couple of ways in which you could perhaps put some of the ideas in this brief lesson into action. The first of these is to try the 5-second rule. Certainly it's worked for me, simply getting out of bed on cold winter mornings. The alarm goes off, I count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and endeavour to have my foot on the ground, on the floor, before I get to 1. Otherwise the likelihood is I would press the snooze button. You may want to check that concept out more on YouTube or by checking out the book itself. Or the second option that you may want to try as an alternative is to try and use the Pareto principle each day to look at which tasks you are going to tackle, which are the high impact tasks, the 20% tasks that will give you 80% of the output. Try one of those. Hopefully you'll get something out of them. We'll be discussing procrastination in more detail as we progress. Thank you. Speak to you soon.